Hello, security pros, and good afternoon. Thank you for joining us on today's ESA webinar, Selling and Installing for Escalated Response, the Benefits of Selling AVS-01. AVS-01 is a new TMA standard, the Alarm Validation Scoring Standard. This standard defines how monitoring centers and 911 ECCs will communicate the alarm level of burglary signals during the dispatch process, with the goal to increase safety of first responders and drive escalated response to the highest priority alarms. This session will explore the current state of this impactful standard and what the future holds for sales and installation companies. I'm Hannah Boone, the Marketing Director at ESA, and I'm excited to lead this webinar here today. Before we dive in, I'd like to provide some tips for those of you joining us on your first ESA webinar. First of all, welcome. You will be muted for the duration of this session, but that doesn't mean we don't want to hear from you. If a question or comment comes to mind at any point during today's session, please click the Q&A icon at the bottom of your screen, and I'll ensure we save some time for your questions with our experts here today. We'll also be recording this webinar so that you can rewatch the on-demand session and share it with your colleagues. Tomorrow, you'll receive an email thanking you for your attendance here today, along with a link to the recording. Also, don't miss out on the opportunity to join us at ESX 2025. It will take place on June 16th through the 19th in Cobb County, Georgia, home of the Atlanta Braves. And it is the premier event for electronic security and life safety professionals, with engaging sessions, valuable networking opportunities, and cutting-edge technology exhibits. ESX promises to be an unforgettable experience. So mark your calendars, and registration will be opening soon. We at ESA realize that your time is valuable, and we appreciate you spending some of that time here with us today. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce our presenters today. We have Steve Butkovich, Chief Product Officer at CPI Security and current TMA President. We have Morgan Hertel, VP Technology and Innovation at Rapid Response, and he is a TMA past president. We have David Hall, Director of Public Safety, Lower Allen Township, Pennsylvania. We have Christopher Deniston, Director of Marketing and Contract Development at Rapid Response. And we have Jeremy Bates, who is the President of Bates Security and Vice Chairman of the Board at ESA. So, without further ado, take it away, experts.
Good afternoon, everybody. Again, this is Steve Butkovich. To our ESA viewers that are out there, I just want to thank you for taking some time to be with us today. Also wanted to take a moment to thank ESA Chairman Kevin Stone, ESA CEO Merlin Gilbeau, and certainly Ms. Hannah Boone for hosting us today at ESA. We've got a great topic to talk about today with the AVS-01 alarm scoring standard and how it's going to impact your business and what you can do to hopefully increase sales and installations using this technology. So to get us started, I thought we would kick things off by talking just a little bit about the standard itself, how it evolved and how we got to today. So I'm going to let Morgan, if you would, kind of lead us in that part of the discussion.
Sure, be happy to. Thanks, Steve. Actually, this started in a couple of different places, but the real root of this started about 5 years ago, actually more like 6 years ago, before COVID was even a thing. And TMA hosts an annual convention, and at that convention, a lot of people come from public safety, and we invite the management staff of organizations like the International Chiefs of Police, the National Sheriff's Association, generally people from Homeland Security, Fire Service. They all arrive. And one of their requests that came out of that meeting was to come up with a way that we can score. And they asked us if we could help them with that process, because they were at a point where even then labor was a real problem for them. They needed data to be able to make good decisions, but they needed it done in a very consistent way. About that same time, PPVAR, which is another trade association, was also working with public safety and coming up with ways to do a very similar thing. And so the process was kicked off as part of Don Young's stint as president, who's COO for ADT, a little over 4 years ago now, to get this standard started. And then I was fortunate enough to bring it to, bring it to the end and get it done. But there's several goals in mind. One of those is to give law enforcement some tools in which they can use consistently deliver data to be able to determine manpower requirements. Do they send one car, two cars, two people, five people? What do they send to that? Do they send a SWAT team, or how are they going to manage that? Because not all alarms are the same. The other thing that we needed to do is we at a monitoring center also needed the ability to be able to vary our workflow based on what was going on. So in some cases, for example, we may send a guard versus a police officer to a lower priority event. So we needed a way to consistently do that, and rather than have the industry have a bunch of different organizations all with their own ways of scoring it, it just made sense to do it this way and have a very consistent and a verifiable way to be able to do this. Steve, that answer that question on where it came from?
That's perfect. And could you just take a moment and talk about the different scoring elements?
Yeah, scoring is actually really easy. When we first started this, one of the things we did was we spent a ton of time, the committee did a ton of time on really trying to go through and understand data. There was about 65, 70 people that started on the committee, many of which were were for public safety, law enforcement, places like that. Many of them were from manufacturers and also monitoring centers and installation companies. So a pretty good representation all the way across. And we looked at several thousand actual alarms. And our original plan was to have this very complex algorithm to try and determine, based on 50 different things, what this score could look like. And we very quickly realized that most of our assumptions that we made were simply not accurate assumptions, and that we had to do something a little bit simpler to start with, especially since none of our data was normalized. So what we ended up with after about 6 months of really working through this was to have 5 different levels. And it's really simple. You can figure this out in your head. You can use automation to create the scoring, but honestly, most people can do it in their head pretty fast. And we wanted to be able to have a scoring standard that could be used by something as small as a guard shack in a small community that was monitoring their own alarms, all the way up to a mega center that was monitoring, tens of millions of accounts. So alarm level 0 is really simple. There's no crime in progress. So that could be an alarm with an opening or a cancel or a valid card read or really facial recognition, just about anything that could tell us that that person that's on site is authorized to be there. Alarm level 1 is exactly what we're doing today. They're the same alarms that we're doing with motion detectors, door contacts, flash break detectors, things like that. Everything starts as an alarm level 1 and then goes either up or down depending on what else we get. Alarm level 2, and this was a request from law enforcement, was alarm level 2 is to understand whether or not a human being is on site. Friend or foe isn't as critical as understanding that a person is there. Too many law enforcement agents and too many homeowners and business owners have been hurt or killed by running into one another when the other group didn't think that anybody was going to be there. So alarm level 2 really is an officer safety thing, but it also means that we have a person that's on site that we either couldn't contact or we couldn't authenticate on site. Alarm level 3 is that same. We have a confirmation that a human being's on site, but we also have a very high level of confidence that a crime is occurring. So we're seeing products being put into a vehicle. We see a forcible entry. We heard it. We use an analytic. It's all performance based. So there's a number of ways to get there. As long as we got there by using different technologies than what we've been doing for the last 30, 40 years. We had a commitment to law enforcement not to do the same thing we've been doing, but call it something different. That would not have worked out well. So alarm level 3 is a threat to property. Has to be pretty clear. It can't be ambiguous. It needs to be some really solid evidence that that's going on. Alarm level 4 now is escalated to a threat to human life. So think about a burglary that turns into a home invasion or something along that lines, where you started out with one type of alarm and now all of a sudden you have somebody that's in peril. And those are the scores. And honestly, they're fairly simplistic to score, especially if you're using simple technology like audio and video and things like that. Pretty easy to figure this out. It's not horribly complex. It can be if you start to use a lot of complicated analytics and things like that to get there. But for most monitoring centers, you can do this pretty quickly.
Yeah, I think the great thing about the standard, as Morgan kind of pointed out, we spent a lot of time in the standards development talking about all the crazy technologies that would be evolving and coming at us. And at the end of the day, rather than try to build some complex algorithm to figure out how one technology was going to lend in or not, at the end of the day, it's really simple. If you create a new widget that you're going to sell to your customers in the security market, does it help you identify if a person is present? Does it help you identify there's a crime in progress, or does it help you identify that there's a threat to life? So we'll talk more about that as we get deeper into our conversation today. Did want to take a moment just to share with you that while the standard was released about 2 years ago, from that time to now, we've had the National Sheriff's Association this year has issued a resolution to support AVS-01. And just this month, the International Chiefs of Police, IACP, just issued a resolution supporting AVS-01 as well. So we've got tremendous support from public safety on this. We have some of our biggest monitoring centers, ADT, Affiliated Rapid Response, that have piloted AVS-01 in the early days of, say, the beginning of this year, and even some before then, that are actively dispatching with alarm scoring today. The rest of the monitoring centers that exist in the world today are still migrating and working to implement AVS-01, as well as implement a UL standard for AVS-01 certification. So if you're using a third-party monitoring center, you may want to ask if they have implemented this technology or whether or not they're UL certified or not. That being said, there's a lot of benefits to what this can do, and not only for our customers and installers, but as it applies to public safety. We've got David Hall with us today, Director of Public Safety, Lower Allen Township. David, can you tell everybody here a little bit about why this is so important to public safety?
Yeah, absolutely, Steve. My background it was law enforcement. I started in 1979, so that kind of like sets the stage. But I spent 25 years originally on the street. And at the time, an alarm was an alarm was an alarm. It was given by a comm center. You had absolutely no idea most of the time, other than the fact that they had, an indication there was an alarm there. You didn't know if it was valid. You didn't know if there was a person present. You didn't know anything. So when AVS-01 concept came around, I thought this is groundbreaking. It's the opportunity to provide more information to responding officers. It's an opportunity to provide officer safety because they, in some of these cases, will know what they're approaching and what information is there, especially when you get to the 3s and 4s, and they can expedite their response. The ones are the routines, and how we ended up as part of the discussion of the committee, how we ended up with some of the levels was law enforcement generally responds either emergency, urgent, and or a routine response. So we kind of factored in some of the qualities of these different levels as to whether or not you would make a decision to expedite response, or even if you sent more officers. It was alluded to earlier that we are having problems recruiting across the country. I think everybody probably knows that. And so we have limited resources to respond anyhow. So the more we can do to provide information to respond with the right staff makes a whole lot of sense. So why should I send 4 officers that are working the street to a 1 potentially? And I'll send 4 to a 3 and a 4 because there's a property issue and or a life issue. The ones may get a less of a response. They're still going to get a response, but the logistics of all of that and the response is all determined by the individual police department and the level at which it's dispatched from whoever their comm center is. So, but I think it gives us much more information from a public safety perspective, from an officer that's going to respond, or officers plural, or a commander that's going to assign resources to go to an alarm. It was a game changer.
Thanks, David. That's really helpful. Moving to more of the dealer perspective, Jeremy being our dealer as part of our panel today, can you tell us a little bit about why AVS-01 is important to you as a dealer?
Well, I believe that AVS-01 basically is proof in the pudding, so to speak, of what we've been doing in the Sonatrol world all these years, where we have used audio detection and verification to reduce false alarms and to prioritize police dispatches and resulting in apprehensions. So we have lived in the detection verification world for many years on the Sonatrol side of our business. And so when they have the AVS-01, now it legitimizes that, it further legitimizes that. And then now as we move into video, where we're selling video monitoring and video alarm monitoring, it allows, I think it encourages dealers that are listening, such as myself and others, to sell a better quality system. And, we as professionals should be trying to service our customers with the best technology.
Absolutely.
Reduce false alarms, so we're not wasting their time. And then also when we do dispatch, it's likely to increase a better response time and hopefully apprehend criminals.
Yeah, certainly since implementing the standard in monitoring centers one way or the other, Morgan, you guys have been doing this since January. Have you seen apprehensions increase?
Yes, and that's especially true in the Sonatrol side, where that process, that the equipment, everything that's around it is really baked into that. And so now we're being able to dispatch those as twos and threes consistently, and you're starting to see not only an increase in apprehensions and less loss, but now you're starting to see people get excited about that in the monitoring side. They're starting to say, I got a level 2 or I got a level 3 today, and I got, we made a difference. And being able to track that is really starting to track our efficiencies and our effectiveness within helping with public safety, keep the citizens safe. We're a vital part of that. And this is going to be a really healthy way to be able to keep track of how effective we are.
Now, for installing companies and dealers, is kind of like, what does it mean to me? That's one of the big opportunities that we have to share with you today. We have with us the Director of Marketing from Rapid Response, Chris Dennison. How are you guys marketing AVS-01 to your dealer community today, and how are you creating excitement around AVS-01?
Yeah, Steve. So, for Rapid, it's all about education. And actually, that applies to the dealer too. It starts with making sure that everybody who is touching base with either a dealer from Rapid side or from a customer, standpoint, is educated on what AVS-01 is, and importantly, what it isn't. Why is it valuable to a dealer? Why is it valuable to their customers? And, I like to put myself in the shoes of whoever I'm speaking with. Why do I care? Why should I care? What's the value there? And help answer that question. So, we strongly recommend that dealers, educate themselves and read up on the standard. There are dedicated web pages out there. TMA has published one very easy to remember, AVS-01.com. Really easy to find and really easy to educate yourself on. Rapid has educated our dealers through a blog series, even have gone so far to generate one about how to talk to your customers about AVS-01, how to answer those questions that you should be prepared to answer when the customer asks you. And, once they're educated, we encourage dealers to go out and share that knowledge. We've created toolkits of assets, for our dealers, because many of them don't have a marketing back end. They don't have that in their budget. So we've created toolkits, including social media, email blasts, photos and things for their website. You know, they could do mailers. At the end of the day, you know, trying to arm them to be proactive in communication out to their customer base. Because if they don't, you know, ultimately those customers will learn about it from somebody else, and there's, you know, jeopardy there you don't want to cause. We feel like there's a competitive advantage out there. You know, if there's a dealer working with a monitoring center that is already adopted AVS-01, strike while the iron is hot. Get that word out there right away. Take advantage and spread that word to current and prospective customers, because that will help make the customer stickier as this standard becomes more widespread. And then it also catches the attention of new customers, potentially, you know, from somebody you're looking to gain a market share from. You know, in the end of the day, you know, we're all about arming our dealers with whatever they need to be successful. This is a big part of it for our industry. This is something we all need to get behind. And if we can help our dealers do that, we want to do that.
Absolutely. And I think, as you point out here, it's really important to explain to the customer what it means to them, or we don't want to be in a situation 6 months from now where you just sold somebody 6 months ago and you talked about the importance, you didn't talk about the importance of alarm scoring, and now they talk to their neighbor who maybe has a different system or whatever else, and they say, well, my guy said this is the future. If you're not installing cameras or technologies today to help identify and have a more verified response, you're not going to get the escalated response that you really want and the best performance out of your security offering. So to that degree, I mean, Jeremy, as you pointed out, you guys have been doing Sonatrol for quite a while, where you have to market, you know, person detection using audio capabilities. How does your team market that to, or explain that, the value to that to your customers?
You know, for us, we have the most success when it is what we lead with. It's, you know, we want every system sold a certain way and with a certain technology. And so, you know, you have to educate your sales team, but you need to make sure that you're educating your operations team. The technicians need to be talking the same language that the salespeople have been talking about. So the entire company office needs to be believe in what you're doing. And so our success has been is, you know, obviously we are constantly talking about what we can do with a system that like our Sonatrol detection system or video monitoring system. So we're constantly educating our people. You know, some are hearing it from, multiple times. Other employees are brand new, but it's a great way to make sure we're consistent with it and that they believe in it. When people believe in it, they're going to sell it. So, you know, I don't want to say brainwashing, but, you know, we're making sure our people are very versed on how to sell the product or the service.
You're selling on a value proposition, not on a price anymore. You know, you're providing a valuable service that's different than everybody else's. And so you now get to sell based on that value proposition versus just the price. And that's meaningful for most consumers.
Yeah, I would echo that. I mean, we're never the cheapest company in the room because we're investing in technology that, you know, it's more expensive, and the monitoring is more expensive. And so you have to charge appropriately to have a successful business to back all that up, right? And so it takes a force that's a team that's very well educated and that can help differentiate and say, this is the difference between this system and the system that I'm proposing to you. I remember back in my sales days, you know, I had the old-fashioned flip chart, and I would be flipping through my presentation guide and talking to the prospect, and, you know, I went out of my way to make sure I built value from day one with my ancient tools that I had back, 25 years ago.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I think for us, we've even changed our sales process at CPI a few years back when the standard was first being worked on, that we wanted our customers to be future ready. Where we really push the attachment rate on video and the importance of video to help with alarm validation, that it's real, but now we can achieve what alarm scoring wants us to identify as, is there a person present, threat to property, threat to life. These elements exist and all of that. But it's almost like fire protection for us. Like, we would feel it's a disservice if we came out to a customer and didn't offer them fire protection. If something ever happened, you'd feel like you didn't serve them properly. And with AVS-01 and the future of alarm scoring and escalated response being built around this, it's really incumbent that as a selling company that you're out there really encouraging folks to better protect their homes to get the response that's really needed from PD.
I think from a law enforcement perspective, Steve, that's absolutely true. Some of you have heard this story before, but our Yamaha motorcycle shop burglary was a classic example. Their technology had cameras internal and it recorded in the backroom office. But the only thing that went out to the alarm was the door fact that there was an alarm came in. When our officers get there at 3 o'clock in the morning, 8 motorcycles had gone out the door while they were responding. And the one officer passed the vehicle that the video showed was involved going to the scene. So to the extent that they could have had that information right away as they were responding, that would have been a different outcome. We've yet to recover any of those motorcycles. So I think selling what's going to provide that information, it was handled by officers as a level 1 because that's the information we had. We would have moved it to a level 3, 2, and or 3 if we would have had that additional information. So the more information we can get from the scene through the alarm process, the better the outcome's going to be overall.
That's especially true now because adding these, video is so easy to do. Audio is so easy to do today. This is not, future technology. It's here and been here for a while. So now it's time to leverage what you've already been building on for a long time and start to wrap this into one cohesive system.
And Chris and Jeremy, both of you guys touched on the fact that education is important, that you have to educate your consumers and your sales teams one way or the other. Being on the front lines, Jeremy, though, what's your perception that the educated consumer responds or doesn't respond to the information provided when you explain to them the value of audio technology and video? Do people generally step up or not? Or it's a 1 out of 10, or is it properly educated? It's a no-brainer, correct?
Well, to all of us, it's definitely a no-brainer. But I think that you want to have a well thought out presentation, clearly demonstrating the value proposition. But just like anything, some people are going to believe in it and invest in it, and then some people are really just looking for the cheapest solution out there. So if your sales team is doing a good job, really is educated, is delivering a quality presentation that's digestible, understandable by their audience, typically almost everyone when I was selling would say, yeah, I see what you're saying here. But if I didn't make the sell, it was more like, but I really don't need that high quality of a system is what that, the excuse that I would get. But, the difference today, though, is there's so many more false alarms and false dispatches and where jurisdictions that are not even responding. So I think the message is even more important today to make sure that you have a system that's a higher quality system that can, hopefully get up at these higher levels on the AVS-01 standard.
Absolutely. And there's evolving technology out there for presence detection. We've seen cell phone detection and Wi-Fi sensing and other evolving technologies. Does anybody want to respond? How do we think those are going to play into this as we go forward?
I'll touch on it a little bit. One of the things that we didn't talk about in the very beginning of this was that in order to make this standard a viable standard across the industry, it needed a verification, a validation model. And there was a lot of ways we could have done this, but we elected to use UL as that organization to do the third-party verification. So for a monitoring center, they can become UL listed to dispatch AVS-01 levels. They don't have to be an existing UL listed organization. So if they're a small center that never thought about getting their regular UL listing, they can still do this. And so one of the things that happens in that UL listing verification process is this standard itself is performance based. So it doesn't tell you what technology you can use. What it tells you is how to figure out the end result. And when you start looking at it that way, technology starts to drive a lot of this, and it starts to drive it very cost effectively. Now, the easy way to think about this is audio and video, right? I can see somebody, I can hear somebody. But there's a lot of other technologies that tell us when somebody's in a home. For example, there's Wi-Fi sensing. There's cell phone presence detection, like with what Ubiety has done out there to know if somebody's on site. There are all kinds of network monitoring tools that can look for electronics leaving a facility while a burglary is in progress, which we can start to tell you that, hey, my electronics are leaving the property. That's not a normal thing to happen after while burglar alarms increasing. So occurring. So there are all kinds of ways that are going to be available today, but also in the future, the technology is going to drive to make us better and faster at determining these levels.
Well, and the accountability you brought up is really important too. With the UL certification, monitoring stations are required to audit themselves quarterly and then annually inspected by UL to maintain that. And that whole process ensures that monitoring centers are not faking it, if you will, that they have a level 2, 3, or 4 alarm to get a better response, that they're actually following the protocols that are out there. How important was that to the process, Morgan?
You know what? It was really important. It was one of the few things we didn't really have to discuss a lot. It was, we have to have a way to verify it, because what everybody was really concerned about, and rightfully so, was bad actors. The last thing we wanted was somebody that said, hey, every one of my systems is a 2 or a 3, and then just arbitrarily making stuff up, because that would have put the whole program in jeopardy. And so it really required UL to be a part of this, or we could have used another verification industry if we wanted to, but it really made sense to have UL partner with us. They've been a great partner for centuries with the alarm industry, and so they're going to go out and audit your audits now to make sure that the monitoring centers are doing this correctly, and that's really key to success. The other thing that UL did was they stood up a hotline, is probably for lack of a better word, so that PSAPs or ECCs that are having an issue, if they have an issue with a particular monitoring center or alarm company that's calling in inappropriate scoring and they can't resolve it, then they have a direct line to UL to be able to address that directly. And much like in the fire service, that they've had that program for a while in the fire service, so this will allow ECCs to actually have a partner in resolving a problem if they do run into one out there.
I wanted to take a minute, just talk a little bit, our ESA viewers are installing and servicing companies that are out there. Some of them may have their own monitoring station. They can inquire to their own monitoring station folks what they're doing and not doing. But I guess, Jeremy, maybe first, and anybody else can weigh in. What are the questions a dealer should be asking their monitoring center as far as capabilities with regard to AVS-01, and how do they know if it's being used or not?
This is interesting. I mean, I recently switched monitoring stations a couple of years ago, and I wish I had known I wish I had known today I wish I had known this stuff today to ask back then, right? But it's simply, do you adhere to AVS? Do you embrace AVS-01, and are you using it? And then, if not, what is their plan to do so? And if they aren't familiar with it or they're not planning to do it, that would be a lot of red flags to me, and the type of monitoring I'm looking for, type of company I'm trying to build, with the type of services, the systems that I'm installing. And then on top of that, I'd be very interested in, most people are going to be using video for this, most likely. So I would be asking a lot about their particular video programs. And if I'm not doing video already, I would be asking, what partners can you suggest? How good of a partner can my central monitoring station be in helping me set me up on the correct path to do the things that we've been talking about?
Chris or Morgan, anything you want to add?
I've always, striven to education, being such a big thing for dealers, and so often when they're considering, where their monitoring is done, it's about what is the future, not what is the current. If you're only looking at what they offer now, but not really talking about what their plans are down the road, the future of your company may be at risk. So that is important to align yourself with a company that has that thought process, is thinking about what's next, is involved in trying to help, the industry move forward. So we really like to partner with dealers on that mission, and we think we do it well.
Yeah, this is not a program you're going to turn up in the next week. This is going to be something that you're going to have to formulate over the next 6 months, really understanding what your monitoring center can do, what products and services they can support, backing into that the hardware that you want to use, and then developing your service team and your installation teams to be able to do this. So this is going to take a little bit of time to get down and get perfected. Hopefully your monitoring center can help you with a lot of this material and how the process works and how the scoring works and what the reports are going to look like and all that wraps up into this to really help you and guide you through this process. Because I can tell you that from a competitive perspective, all the big guys that you're running into out in the street today are starting to push this. They're starting to do advertising and everything else. So if you think this is the time is not now, be prepared, because it is.
Yep. Well, and the TMA, the Monitoring Association, has recently surveyed its membership to find out, when are people planning to implement AVS-01. And while we said there's some of the larger players right now have done this as part of a pilot program and are already on board, many of our other members have committed to having things done by end of the year, first quarter next year. So a lot of folks have plans to implement this, and it does take time to get it pushed out. But you'd also want to know too, because it may change the way that they communicate with your customers. So as a dealer, you'll want to know that if they're telling you that they dispatched on an event as a level 2 or level 3 event, that's education that, if they're reaching out to your customers or communicating to them about a particular response, that information's out there as well.
You definitely want to let your end users know well in advance so that they're not caught off guard and they understand the terminology. So whether you're doing digital marketing, mailers, putting information on your website, whatever it is you're doing to communicate with them today, you need to start to educate them today, well in advance of when you plan on doing the rollout, so that they understand it's coming and are not thrown off by some of the terminology that's used.
All right. And there's a great way to communicate with your customers about the things you're doing to advance the services to them that don't cost them any money. What a great thing to do, so, wonderful opportunity there. As we talk about escalated response, David, you're closer to this one where the other. How long do you think it's going to take before jurisdictions start changing how they respond to alarm signals that are scored one way or the other? Is it happening today?
I think what you said earlier, Steve, about evolution, and Morgan said the same thing, is very true. We've been out pounding the pavement at associations for 911 centers, emergency communication centers, ECCs as they refer to now. Law enforcement, we were at ISAP. We've done over the last 2 years, we've done presentations on this. So we're getting the message out there. But it's really going to become a partnership between the monitoring centers providing that information, because if they're not providing it, the 911 centers won't be able to push it out. But to the extent that they receive that information, they'll be able to dispatch it to field units, and field units would be able to utilize it. So it's going to take kind of a marriage of all three areas to move it, and it's going to depend upon how fast it evolves there. So I think we have the standard. We have a solid standard with AVS-01. What we need now is to elevate it and move it forward to standard practice. I think that standard practice is across all three elements, and that's the challenge.
If you look at the big players today, Steve, if you look at ADT, Rapid Response, Affiliated, Vector, there's a handful of other ones. That represents a significant portion of the industry, well over half. And we've been all using AVS-01 dispatch scoring since January on 100% of our events. So most ECCs today have received many requests for dispatches with AVS-01 scores. The questions coming from agencies are slowly dwindling down to nothing or very few that we get from a question. What does that mean? It's being socialized through all the through NAPCO and NINA on the public safety side, as well as through International Chiefs of Police and Sheriff's Associations. So that kind of socialization's here, and it's going to be to the point where I think by the end of this year that there won't be an ECC out there that doesn't know what this is. You may not have made any internal decisions on what they're going to do yet, but they know exactly what it is.
Well, and we've
Well,
also,
that's why we're here in front of all of these ESA folks, you know, are installing and servicing dealers, because they're the last component, if you will, to this puzzle, that they're the ones in direct contact with the customer that can help also evangelize this messaging that it's coming fast, and we want them to be on board, you know, with what the technology is going to mean to not only them, but to the industry and the future of police response. David, you were getting ready to add something?
we've also talked to 911 centers also have call taker software that they use. There's 3 primaries across the country. We've reached out to and have met with all 3. And they are going to be, we understand, incorporating that into their colloquy of questions. So when they see an alarm call come in, they're gonna be putting what level into that question. So all of that, as we said, takes time to evolve.
Yeah, and
Yeah,
same is
and
true
one
with
of the-
ASAP to PSAP too.
Right,
You know,
exactly.
the levels exist today in the standard. That's in the 21 edition standard, to have those levels actually change the level or potentially change the level in the CAD systems. But so today what we're doing is we're sending that as an update message into that with a very standardized way of doing it, so that every monitoring center is sending it the same way. But this will all spill right on through into ASAP to PSAP.
Yeah, and for those of you guys that don't know what ASAP to PSAP is, it's digital dispatching. So some monitoring centers have partnered with ECCs where they can use a ASAP protocol to digitally dispatch instead of making phone calls. Not all jurisdictions support this right now. The ASAP companies that are participating, the monitoring centers that are participating, they represent about 80% of the alarm volume in the industry. So you have the monitoring centers on board there. Right now, we're working to get all the ECCs on board, but this can save roughly 2 to 2.5 minutes per dispatch to get a response that much quicker for your customers. The beauty part of all the technologies that we're bringing to the monitoring industry is the AVS-01 just folds right into this as well. As Morgan pointed out, we're able to send digitally the alarm scoring message along with the dispatch message, so the PD can respond even faster than they would through traditional means.
We can get a dispatch done in under 10 seconds digitally.
Yeah, it's amazing the time savings. We're about wrapping up on our time today. I didn't know if the panel had anything else you guys wanted to add before we open up Q&A.
I think the only thing that I wanted to add was, if there's anybody that has additional questions, wants to reach out to me or probably anybody else on this call, I'd be happy to help them walk through what this process can look like. If you can reach out to the ESA folks and get our contact information, or track us down on LinkedIn or whatever, but I'm willing to help anybody that needs help on trying to figure this out.
Thank you, Morgan. And I think Chris helped do a little pitch for us too, from a TMA perspective. The website that you can go to check out all sorts of information about the AVS-01 scoring standard. You can go to avs-01.com, and there's videos, there's webinars, there's all sorts of information on that webpage that can help educate your organization on how to deploy this, whether it be in the monitoring station, or how you can leverage this information to help you sell and install more systems.
Tell them about the training program, Steve. That's your golden jewel here.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, and right now the AVS-01 training which is also available, and there's a link on that website, was debuted July 1st, and it's absolutely free. Free training that's available for Central Station operators, but it's great information realistically for your salespeople to watch, installers. It really helps them understand the standard and how it works. It's absolutely free. APCO, which is one of the 911 communities agencies, associations that exist, they've recently adopted the TMA training as a standard for 911, not as a standard, as an option for 911 operators, but it's in their catalog to help educate 911 operators as well. So great training that's available, and again, can assist you at all levels if you just want to learn all the nuances of what makes, it's a lot of scenario-based training. If this happens, then this. We didn't really talk about it a lot, but alarm scores go up and down. It may come in as a level 2 because I've been notified through software that there's a person detected through AI software, but I go and I look at the video and it's a dog, not a person. Right now it's a level 1 alarm, or it could be a false alarm, for that matter. So alarm scores go up and down, or can escalate, because I could be watching somebody on video and the crime isn't in progress yet, but then they do something that indicates a crime is in progress or a threat to life as well. So I don't know if you want to speak any more to that, Morgan, and how that applies.
I think you said it well.
All right. That really kind of concludes most of the content that we had for you guys today, but do want to open it up to some questions and answers if anybody's got any questions that they want to ask the panel today.
Yeah, I do see
there are a couple of questions that have been asked in the Q&A column. If anybody wants to just look, we've answered them digitally while this was going on, but some people might be interested in those questions as well.
Yeah, thank you, Morgan. And feel free to submit some while we answer these that were also submitted. How soon will the police change their response to alarm levels?
That's going to be dependent upon when they're receiving these. I mean, I've heard through my own 911 center level 2s dispatched, so they're giving the levels out. It'll be up to the jurisdiction. The information's been out to the police, and there's same thing. We have videos that we can supply to them. I know SEAC actually has a great outreach to police departments, and they have a lot of that information as well. So if an alarm company knows that a police department is not received it or they don't understand it, feel free to contact us and we'll make sure we have the outreach so that they do. But it will depend upon the evolution of the standard. As I said earlier, they're first going to have to receive it, and then at that point incorporate it into their dispatch protocols. Every police department operates pretty much independently when it comes to that. So it will really be up to the AHJ, the organization that's in charge of that jurisdiction, to make a determination.
Right. Well, and in some cases, I point out too that it's not always the AHJ or the chief of police that makes that determination. It's a city council or other things that can change alarm ordinances. So there's certainly differences in ordinance changes that might determine on how responses are done versus police policy and protocols that they follow. Those are two different things and should be looked at separately. You're muted, Hannah.
Interesting. I don't know how that happened. All right. So another question that we have submitted was, how do I know if my central station is using AVS-01? How can I encourage adoption?
I think we responded to this a little bit ago, which is a great question though, but it's reach out, ask your monitoring center if they're implementing it. Even if they've implemented, the more important part is to follow up is that they've got a UL certification as well for AVS-01. It's a new standard from UL, and ask that both of those things are in place. And if not, as I said, a lot of monitoring stations are moving to this by the end of the year to provide some timing on when they are going to be live with this scoring standard. Is there anything else that anybody wanted to add to that? Did I cover that? Okay.
It looks like we have another question that was submitted. The MSP response level to some degree comes from the capabilities of the sensors in the facility. What type of certifications or requirements are there for security equipment? Can security equipment get certified to meet AVS standards similar to works with Alexa?
Yeah, there is no works with Alexa kind of standardization today because this is all performance based. It was really left open for innovation versus trying to do something prescriptive. The concept is to understand situational awareness in a different and better way than was ever used before. So if you've got a device that's not a door or window contact, not a passive infrared motion, but gives us the same kind of data, then that can be leveraged. Like I said, our commitment to law enforcement was to not have it be the same thing we've always done and have it be a different name. But as you can imagine, there's a lot of technology companies looking at trying to how to figure and solve this.
All right, it looks like we have another question that was submitted. Two-way voice has been around for years and years. Will AVS-01 boost its
Steve,
use?
you can answer the two-way voice question.
Well, from a guy, we do 100% two-way voice at CPI Security. So it just reinforces the value that it brings to of our validation and scoring. I do think it will boost adoption and use across other folks. And I would just tell you, it adds tremendous value to our monitoring center and to our customers. It's a different type of response when you're talking to a customer in their home over a speaker mic versus the phone's ringing in the corner of the room, and a lot of times we can't even reach customers if it's a traditional one-way system. So two-way voice is that audio element that allows you to verify, even if they're not supposed to be there. You can hear broken glass, you can hear people talking, so there's a person there, right? Or if you hear a dog barking and no person, there's something there, but it's not a person. But it all goes back to, does it fit in this box? Does it help me identify if there's a person present, threat to property, threat to life? Certainly if somebody's screaming and for help, that's a threat to life. Or it could be even an emergency situation where there's a heart attack or something like that going on. So two-way voice, I will just sing his praises all day long. We've been doing it for over 20 years. I think it's an awesome addition to your tech stack if you're not doing it today.
We're seeing an increase in it as well on our side.
Okay, it looks like we have another question here. ASAP to PSAP for electronic dispatch increases speed to dispatch. Does AVS-01 work with ASAP to PSAP?
Yes.
Yep, it folds
Yes, it
right
does.
in. The operator is able to send the alarm score digitally with the alarm message.
All right, and then I just have one more question here, unless any more get submitted. May have already been covered, but maybe you can elaborate. How do you think sales and installations will change with AVS-01?
Jeremy, that's you.
It's what I would predict is that it's going to drive better quality, and because with the prevalence of false alarms and jurisdictions going to no dispatch or no response, the way to combat that, or not combat it, but way to answer that is to have a system in place that can do the things that we talk about that will rank higher for alarm scoring, and just as importantly, will allow a central station operator to say, this is not a true alarm, and it's not, I'm not even going to bother the authorities with this. And that could be in the technology or at the central station response with like Sonatrol alarms. So I predict that it's going to make us all, those interested in being professional alarm companies, I think it's going to make them have a better service. That's going to increase better response by the police. It's going to make it a safer response for the police. The more information they have in responding, knowing that it's multiple people versus one person, it's allows it to be safer. So I think it just will allow us to do a better job for our customers and for our local authorities.
To tack into that
evolution.
to jump into that, I also think that, to Jeremy's point, as you embark on, these new situations and better response, it generates stories and testimonial situations, and that's how most people learn. So capturing those will allow you to evangelize this idea even more, and being able to give a real world scenario of a burglary that had a better response as a result of this technology and this standard, and being able to capture or prevent something from happening, catastrophic. Those are the kind of stories that customers can relate to, that matters to them, and that resonates. And I think that'll help dealers grow their business.
Yeah, absolutely. I think with video too, some people are sensitive about video inside the house. Even with the video outside the house, we're able to have a better idea of whether a real crime is in progress or not. But the other thing that video does is, one, it creates another deterrence. It's not just a yard sign in the front yard. Cameras on the outside of the home are a deterrent. And we know burglars are going to go to the path of least resistance. So go break in somewhere else where it's easier and they're not likely to get caught. And monitoring stations today with video are talking more about deflections, that we're able to extend the perimeter outside the home so thieves never even make it inside the home. And that's the other added benefit to exterior video and why people are adopting it so much today. So all and many, many reasons to also support the AVS-01 standard.
Excellent. Well, that's all the questions that I have submitted here today, and we're about at time, which is great. Does anyone have any closing statements before we end here today?
I would make, on the Sonatrol side of our business, they got to start with audio detection and verification. And since 1977, when they started keeping statistics, they've had over 186,000 apprehensions that the police have made off of their dispatches. So we got started in 1960. So, and then the police love it. They give it more serious response. We give them more information. So it's a case study. It's a living case study that verification works. And if you don't have Sonatrol as an option, then there's all kinds of, video and other things coming with technology. So this stuff works, and the authorities do appreciate having more information to work with.
They like to hook and book.
Yeah, one of my few apprehensions when I was on the road was a high school that had Sonatrol. We took 4 guys out of there based upon the audio that came in. So it's very clear that the advanced technologies really aid in safety for the responding officers and in the apprehension levels.
And I think in closing, again, just to echo what Morgan said earlier, we're all available. Our contact information's on the webinar. Please reach out to us through LinkedIn or however, if you got follow-up questions on anything that we can help you be successful with. Again, I want to just thank the ESA community for allowing us to come and share this great information with you today. And also want to take a moment to just thank our panelists that are here with us. Chris, Jeremy, David, Morgan, thank you so much for being part of this webinar today. And Hannah, thank you so much for making it happen.
Thank
Well
you.
said. Yeah,
Thank you.
absolutely. Thanks everyone for joining. A lot of great information today. Feel free to reach out to any of our panelists with further questions, and feel free to also mark your calendars for ESX for more education and best practice sharing. We'll see you next year.